In a land far from home, where the air carried the weight of power and pride, 3 young men stood quietly among crowds that bowed easily. Their names were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were not loud men. They did not seek attention. But there was something steady about them, something unshakable, like a tree whose roots go deep beneath the ground. They had been taken from their homeland, from everything they knew, and brought into a kingdom ruled by a mighty king. This king had wealth beyond measure and authority that stretched as far as the eye could see. His word was law. His commands were not questioned. And yet, even in that powerful place, these 3 men held on to something greater than fear. They held on to their faith. One day, the king decided to build a great image, tall and shining, made of gold that glimmered under the sun. It stood high above the people, impossible to ignore. Messengers were sent throughout the land with a command. When the music played, everyone must bow down and worship the golden image. No exceptions. No hesitation. Anyone who refused would be thrown into a blazing furnace. The day came. The people gathered. Officials, leaders, servants, everyone stood before the towering image. The air felt heavy, filled with expectation and fear. Then the music began. Loud instruments echoed across the land. One by one, people fell to their knees. Heads bowed low. Hands trembled. It was easier to bow than to stand. Easier to follow than to resist. But in the middle of that sea of bending bodies, 3 figures remained standing. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not move. They did not bow. Their hearts beat fast, but their feet stayed firm. They knew the cost. They understood the danger. But they also knew who they were and who they believed in. And that mattered more than anything the king could threaten. It did not take long for others to notice. Some men, eager to gain favor with the king, stepped forward and pointed at them. Their voices carried accusation and anger. "There are men who do not obey your command," they said. "They do not bow to your image." The king's face hardened. His pride was wounded. His authority was being challenged. He ordered that the 3 men be brought before him immediately. When they stood before the king, the room fell silent. His voice was sharp, filled with both anger and disbelief. "Is it true?" he demanded. "Do you refuse to serve my gods or worship the image I have set up?" He gave them one more chance. The music would play again. If they bowed, all would be forgiven. But if they refused, they would be thrown into the fiery furnace. And then he asked a question filled with pride and challenge. "What God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" The 3 men looked at the king, not with fear, but with calm strength. Their answer was simple, yet powerful. "We do not need to defend ourselves before you," they said. "If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us. And he will deliver us from your hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the image you have set up." There was something in their words that shook the room. It was not just what they said, but how they said it. There was no anger. No rebellion. Just quiet courage. The king's face burned with fury. His pride could not accept their refusal. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. The flames roared, rising higher, glowing brighter, as if the fire itself had been awakened in anger. Strong soldiers were commanded to tie the 3 men and throw them into the furnace. The heat was so intense that as the soldiers approached, the flames consumed them. The very fire meant to punish the 3 men destroyed those who carried out the command. And then, bound and helpless, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into the blazing furnace. The fire swallowed them. The crowd watched in silence. The king leaned forward, expecting to see the end of defiance. The flames danced wildly, consuming everything in their path. But then something changed. The king's expression shifted. His eyes widened. He stood up suddenly, confusion and shock filling his face. "Did we not throw 3 men into the fire?" he asked. "Yes, your majesty," came the reply. "But look," the king said, his voice trembling. "I see 4 men walking in the fire, unbound and unharmed. And the 4th looks like a divine being. The fire that should have destroyed them had no power over them." Inside the furnace, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not lying in ashes. They were standing. Walking. Free. The ropes that bound them had burned away, but their bodies remained untouched. Not even the flames could reach them. And they were not alone. There was another presence with them. A calm, powerful presence that turned the furnace from a place of destruction into a place of protection. The fire still burned, but it no longer had authority. Outside, the king was shaken to his core. The power he trusted, the command he gave, the punishment he believed in, all of it was being undone before his eyes. He moved closer to the furnace and called out, his voice no longer filled with pride, but with urgency. "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out. Come here." The 3 men stepped out of the fire. The crowd leaned in, expecting to see burns, wounds, signs of suffering. But there were none. Not a single hair on their heads was singed. Their clothes were not scorched. There was not even the smell of smoke on them. It was as if the fire had never touched them. The same furnace that consumed soldiers had no power over them. The king stood in awe. The anger that once filled him was gone, replaced by something deeper, respect, even reverence. "Praise be to their God," he said. "He has sent his presence and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and refused to obey my command. They were willing to give up their lives rather than serve any god except their own." The story spread quickly. People spoke of the fire that could not burn, of the men who would not bow, and of the God who stood with them in the flames. But beyond the miracle, there was something even greater. It was the courage to stand when everyone else bowed. It was the faith to believe even when the outcome was uncertain. It was the strength to say, even if things do not go the way we hope, we will still stand. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not know how the story would end when they made their choice. They did not know they would walk out of the fire unharmed. All they knew was that their faith was not something they could trade for safety. And that is what made their story powerful. Because real faith is not only about believing when things go well. It is about standing firm when everything around you says to give in. It is about choosing what is right, even when it is hard. The furnace was real. The danger was real. The fear was real. But so was their faith. And in the middle of the fire, they were not alone. That is the part people remember the most. Not just that they survived, but that someone was with them in the flames. Because sometimes, the greatest miracle is not being kept from the fire, but being kept through it. And long after the flames died down, the story of 3 men who refused to bow continued to burn in the hearts of those who heard it, a reminder that courage, faith, and quiet strength can shine even in the hottest fire.